Hi, parents. Welcome back to the Parent Guide podcast. I am Matt Bulkley, licensed psychotherapist. And if you're a parent listening to this right now, I want you to take a deep breath. You're here because you care, and you're here because you're trying to navigate really one of the most complex hidden terrains in modern parenting in this digital age. And let's start today by pulling back the curtain on a scene that literally plays out in millions of households across the country. Picture a normal weekday evening, maybe a Tuesday evening, your 16-year-old son or daughter sitting upstairs in their room, the door's closed, lights are low, and they're scrolling through their phone. To the untrained eye, they're just checking notifications or playing a game or browsing social media, but for far too many teens, they are actually attending an unvetted, highly explicit masterclass in human intimacy. They aren't just looking at images or videos. They are downloading a script, a deeply ingrained set of rules dictating how to view human beings, how to treat a romantic partner, what to expect from physical intimacy. But here's the reality that most parents don't see until it's already wreaking havoc. The script that pornography teaches isn't just unrealistic. It's fundamentally manipulative, and it is actively making our teens less satisfied, more anxious, and deeply disconnected. Today, parents, we're unpacking groundbreaking, interesting research that reveals how pornography is rewriting the sexual scripts of a generation and why it traps them in a cycle of dominance, and most importantly, how you can help your teen to break out of this. So let me give you a clinical window into what this actually looks like. A few months ago, I started working with a family, and keep in mind, these are all names changed for confidentiality, but let's call the parents David and Sarah and their 17-year-old son, Julian. Julian, straight A student on the varsity soccer team, really a kid who had every outward marker of success, but his mom noticed a subtle, chilling shift over the space of about a year to year and a half, to where Julian had become increasingly and intensely irritable and highly secretive with his phone and other electronics. And whenever the topic of dating or relationships, romantic relationships, would come up around the dinner table, around the house, he would offer really pretty incredibly cynical and dismissive remarks. And then it came to a crisis point where Julian's girlfriend of about 6 months or so broke up with him out of the blue, kind of abruptly. And as his mom attempted to comfort her, the girlfriend confessed through tears that Julian had become entirely different behind closed doors. She said, felt like he wasn't even looking at me anymore. He was trying to choreograph everything that we did. He was demanding things that made me uncomfortable. And if I said no, he'd get angry, tell me that I was being prude. And it felt like he wanted to control me, not to be with me. And of course, Julian's parents were devastated. They thought, where did our sweet boy learn to treat a young woman like an object? Well, the answer is that Julian, he didn't invent that behavior. He really was just simply reciting a script or a series of scripts that he had memorized through probably thousands of hours of high exposure pornography consumption. So we're going to map out exactly how that happens, look at some definitive data, and give you hopefully a blueprint, a tactical blueprint to help your teen to rewrite that script. So parents, stay with me here to understand how a healthy teen boy like Julian ends up adopting aggressive or controlling sexual behaviors. We have to look at the psychological framework of what we'll call sexual script theory. In behavioral psychology, we define a sexual script as some mental blueprint or a cognitive schema. Think of it kind of like a movie script. A script tells an actor where to stand, what to say, how to express emotion, how the scene is supposed to resolve. And for adolescents who are going through the vulnerable, confusing stage of puberty and psychosocial development, they are desperately searching for blueprints. And they want to know, well, how am I supposed to act? What is expected of me? What does this romantic or a sexual encounter look like? And historically, these types of blueprints were authored by a community. They were shaped by conversations with parents, probably influenced by ethical frameworks from a religion or a faith community, and and peer interactions and cultural narratives about romance and courtship and dating and mutual respect. But unfortunately, one of the byproducts of the digital age, particularly with pornography today, the algorithms have replaced those communities. Pornography has, whether we like to accept it or not, pornography has become the primary author of the sexual script for the vast majority of online teens. And because their brains are highly neuroplastic, meaning that they're actively writing themselves or wiring themselves based on repeated experiences and inputs, the explicit content that they consume doesn't just pass through their eyes, it embeds itself into their neural architecture. Let's look at the science, because this isn't just a clinical opinion. We have definitive empirical data that shows us exactly why, well, it shows us exactly what this script contains. Specifically, recent large-scale replication studies led by a researcher Wright and colleagues have confirmed a deeply troubling trend in adolescent development. And this is that the data demonstrates a direct dose response correlation. So high exposure to pornography among U.S. adolescents is explicitly linked to the internalization of sexual scripts that are centered on dominance, coercion, and control. When researchers control for variables, things like maybe socioeconomic background or pre-existing behavioral issues and family structure, the variable that consistently predicts an adolescent's desire for power over partnership is the volume and frequency of pornography consumption. And the 2025 data tells us that teenagers aren't merely viewing these interactions as an isolated entertainment, because the adolescent prefrontal cortex is still developing. They lack the cognitive maturity to compartmentalize fantasy from reality. So they look at highly produced, often aggressive adult film, and they think, "Oh, well, this is the gold standard. This is how men and women interact. So if I want to be mature, successful, or masculine, this is what I have to mimic." And what is the core theme of the modern digital script? Well, unfortunately, it is the shift from connection to performance and from mutuality to power. Instead of intimacy being viewed as a shared language of vulnerability, safety, and mutual affection, the pornography script recast it as a performance where one person dominates and the other submits. And especially for young men, the script teaches that their worth is tied to their ability to exert this rigid control. And for young women, it often scripts them to accept the degradation or the discomfort as it's a normative part of pleasing their partner. So parents, when you understand that your teen is navigating a world where this script is pushed on them constantly, well, you stop seeing their behavioral changes as simple teenage rebellion. You begin to see it for what it truly is. It's a profound cognitive distortion brought on by digital conditioning. Well, let's bring this down to earth. As a parent, how do you know if the pornography script is rewiring your teenager's mind? Because it's rarely as obvious as just catching them in the act on their phone. Instead, let me just say this: as a psychotherapist specializing in adolescent sexualized behaviors, I look for how this script manifests in day-to-day life. There is an anatomy of dominance that plays out in really three specific and fairly recognizable behavior patterns. And so let's break those down so you can spot them if they are manifesting in your teen son. So number one would be rigid control. And the first sign is an overarching need for control, which so often bleeds out of their bedroom and into everyday relationships. So a teen boy who has internalized the pornography script feels an intense, anxious pressure to dictate every aspect of an interaction. They might demand absolute compliance from a girlfriend regarding schedules, texting habits, clothing choices. In their minds, to be an adult partner means to be in charge. If their partner expresses autonomy, sets a boundary, or says no to an idea, that the teen doesn't just experience normative disappointment, they experience a profound ego threat. They become defensive, manipulative, or angry because their script tells them that a boundary is a challenge to their power. Number two would be mimicry of aggression. And this one can be pretty jarring for parents to witness or to hear about. Teens will begin to utilize things like language or vocal tones or physical commands that they have observed on a screen, often in pornography scenes. They might use derogatory slang casually when talking about peers, or they might exhibit rough, entitled behaviors in their romantic relationships. And the tragic part of this dynamic is that many teens are doing this really without consciously even realizing how disrespectful or damaging that it is. They're simply reciting the lines that they have viewed in the pornography. They've seen actors on screens get rewarded for aggressive behavior. So they apply that same blueprint to a real life partner, leaving that partner feeling objectified, unsafe, manipulated, and used. And then finally, the third would be the emotional wall, and probably and arguably the most heartbreaking, at least for me, the one for me, to treat in psychotherapy is what I call the emotional wall. When a teen boy views intimacy through the lens of dominance, any true emotional vulnerability dies. To be vulnerable means to let your guard down, to admit weakness, to connect deeply with another individual. But the pornography script, it says that weakness is unacceptable. You must always be performance ready, detached, and fully in control. And well, as a result, these teen boys build a massive emotional wall. They become completely incapable of handling emotional intimacy or vulnerability. If a partner wants to talk about feelings, express insecurity, or build a deep bond that is non-sexual, well, the porn conditioned teen will shut down, mock them, find an excuse to leave. They become performers rather than partners. Parents, to help you to just kind of synthesize this to a deeper level, let's just want to offer maybe the concept of a quick comparative guide, what this would look like in your home versus what would be considered healthy development. So normal healthy adolescent development would look like something like that he can navigate relationship boundaries with curiosity and respect, versus signs of a pornography script would be that he expresses intense frustration or anger when a romantic partner sets a boundary. Healthy adolescent development would be something to the effect of being open to emotional conversations and sharing vulnerabilities, versus porn addicted script would be that he shuts down, completely mocks any type of discussion about feelings or emotions. Healthy adolescent development would be that he treats peers, girlfriends, romantic interests as full individuals with distinct lives, whereas the porn addictive script would be that he exhibits an objectifying or hypercritical attitude toward others' bodies or roles. And healthy adolescent development would be something to the effect that he maintains a balanced approach to device use and remains integrated in your family life, whereas porn addicted script would be that there's extreme secrecy and hypervigilance with screens and intense irritability when that is interrupted. So parents, if you're noticing these shifts, if any of those porn addicted script signs are evident with your son, and they seem to view dating as maybe a conquest to be won, or a transaction to be optimized rather than a connection to be nurtured, then you're probably looking at the pornography script in action, and they aren't turning into bad people, but they are turning into programmed people. So let's talk about the grand illusion here, the big lie of the pornography industry. The script promises our kids the more dominance, more detachment, more extreme behavior will equal more pleasure, more validation, and ultimate satisfaction. And it tells a young man, if you act like this dominant performer, you'll be the ultimate alpha. It tells young women, if you submit to this, you'll be deeply desired. But here's the thing, the scientific consensus and reaffirmed by 2025 research, it exposes a massive and painful paradox here. Adolescents who enact these dominant porn-based behaviors report significantly lower levels of relational and even sexual satisfaction. So let's unpack the neurobiology of why that happens, because this is actually a powerful concept that you can share with your teen son. Human satisfaction and pleasure are deeply and really inextricably wired into our biology through attachment. We are cooperative relational mammals. When two human beings engage in intimacy, it's rooted in mutual respect, safety, genuine emotional connection. The brain releases a massive flood of neurochemicals, specifically one that we've covered a lot in our podcasts and the YouTube videos, and that's oxytocin and also vasopressin, the neurobiology of connection, which is the main focus there, is often referred to as the bonding hormone or the trust molecule. It lowers cortisol, stress levels. It creates a deep sense of security, and it maximizes the brain's reward centers. And testing. And it is the chemical that makes intimacy feel deeply fulfilling on a soul level. And here is the tragedy for the porn conditioned teen boy. When you treat a human partner like an object to be controlled or used or choreographed, you bypass the attachment system. You bypass it entirely because there is no emotional safety. There's no vulnerability. And because there is no vulnerability, the brain does not release that profound oxytocin hit. So instead, the experience is driven purely by spikes in dopamine, the chemical of anticipation and novelty. And dopamine without oxytocin is incredibly short-lived. It gives sharp, intense spike, but followed by a massive immediate crash, which then leaves the adolescent male feeling profoundly empty, anxious, and detached the second that the encounter is over. And they think, well, wait, I did exactly what the script said to do. I controlled the situation. I performed perfectly. So why do I feel so lonely? Why do I feel so dirty and empty? Because they don't understand the science. They come to a dangerous, distorted conclusion that I must not have done it intensely enough. I need to find more extreme content, use more control, find a more intense high. And this is the birth of the vicious cycle of pornography addiction. They're chasing a relational and physiological high that their very behavior is preventing them from ever actually reaching. They're starving for connection while stuffing themselves with digital junk food, creating an escalation of use that damages their self-esteem. It alters their brain chemistry and it fractures their potential for real life relationships. Well, parents, if you're listening to this and your heart is sinking because you recognize maybe that your teen, that you can see elements of this in your teen's son, I want you to again take a deep breath and know that the brain's neuroplasticity works both ways. Just as the brain can be conditioned into a script of dominance, it can be reconditioned and healed through intentional, healthy connection. You can help your teen to break the script, but it does require moving out of panic or frustration or anger or hurt and into a strategic, structured plan. So let's walk through the first steps of maybe what I call an outpatient intervention that you can actually start implementing today. So step one, move from interrogation to conversation. And this one's hard because parents tend to get caught up in the interrogation phase. When parents discover a pornography problem, their natural fear-based reaction is to interrogate. They demand answers. Well, how long have you been doing this? And what sites are you visiting? And who taught you this? And this approach immediately triggers the teens' defense mechanisms. Their walls go up, shame locks them down, and unfortunately, they will lie and be deceptive and secretive to protect themselves. So instead, as parents, we must initiate a calm, collaborative conversation. Shift the focus away from a moral trial, a guilt trip, into a discussion about reality versus illusion. And use the literal concept of the stunt performance. And you can say something like, look, you know how when we watch an action movie, we see a guy jump off a 70-story building and land perfectly on a motorcycle. Well, we know that it's a stunt performance. It's highly edited. There are wires and safety nets and CGI. And obviously, if you tried to copy that in real life, you'd destroy yourself. Well, pornography is the exact same thing. It's a highly manufactured, edited stunt performance designed by adult actors to make money. It's not real life. And if you try to copy those stunts with a real life partner, you are going to hurt them and you are going to end up miserable. So by framing it that way, you remove the immediate barrier of shame or guilt, but you invite them to look critically at the media, to take a critical approach to the media, the porn scripts that they're consuming. So step two would be to model and rebuild emotional awareness because the dominant script completely numbs emotional intelligence. We have to actively rebuild or build, in some cases, your teen's capacity to identify and articulate feelings. If a adolescent male cannot label their own internal emotional states like anxiety or loneliness or boredom or inadequacy, then they will naturally turn to a device or to pornographic material to numb those feelings. And furthermore, if they can't understand their own emotions, they will never have the capacity to read or respect or validate the emotions of a real life romantic partner. And I can tell you over the years, I think as a clinician, to the extent that I find adolescent males pretty stagnated, underdeveloped in their capacity to identify and express their emotions. This is a huge clinical issue for adolescent males. So start making emotional language normal in your home. Help them to unpack their day without judgment. So maybe when they're irritable, instead of firing back with anger, we'll pause and say, "Hey, you seem really overwhelmed right now. What's going on under the surface?" And you are teaching them that emotions are safe to experience and safe to communicate, eliminating the need to escape into a world of digital control. So next would be to implement structured outpatient resources. And let's be entirely honest here as parents and clinicians in the digital age, a simple heart-to-heart talk, well, it's great, but it's rarely enough to break an entrenched addiction. The algorithms are too sophisticated, the accessibility is too pervasive, the neurological pull incredibly strong. You're going to need more than just a heart-to-heart talk. You're going to need a structured evidence-based system to guide your family through this recovery process, and this is where I'm always a firm advocate for utilizing specialized outpatient resources, specifically the recovery toolbox for teens. And this isn't just it's not an internet filter or a piece of monitoring software. This is a comprehensive, clinically backed workbook bundle that's designed specifically for parents and teens. It provides you as parents with the exact step-by-step scripts, conversation guides, behavioral contracts needed to systematically dismantle the pornographic script at home. And it takes the guesswork out of recovery. Instead of wondering, well, what do I say next week? Or what would be the next important concept? How do we handle a relapse? The recovery toolbox, specifically the parent guide in the toolbox, gives you a clear, structured roadmap to foster honesty, reestablish healthy boundaries, and track progress. And for families in early to maybe moderate stages of discovering the pornography issue, it really is the most robust outpatient intervention resource available to help you reclaim your home setting. And you can use it as a parent-led intervention in the home, or you can use it in collaboration with a clinician in your area. You can get the recovery toolbox in the bookstore at therapyassociates.net, and it's the blue version. But parents, let's also talk about this. What happens when the addiction has progressed beyond the reach of outpatient conversations or a parent-led intervention or anything that can happen outside a controlled setting? And unfortunately, this is a question that I face with parents on a regular basis in my practice. Sometimes the digital conditioning has cut so deep that the compulsive behavior has completely spun out of control. And so if you're experiencing a total breakdown in family dynamics, if your teen is actively engaging in high risk sexual behaviors, illegal or escalating online risky behaviors, if there's underlying sexual trauma maybe that they're trying to numb from, or if the lying, the manipulation, the deceit, the secrecy, the hostility have made your home an emotional war zone, if you just simply lost any capacity for having influence in your teen's life, you cannot talk your way out of those types of severe neurological crises. You need a circuit breaker, and you need something to completely disrupt the system. And this is where Starguide's wilderness therapy becomes necessary life-saving intervention, a digital detox, the ultimate reset, the ultimate disruption to the addiction. So Starguides it's really one of the only specialized, highly clinical programs in the entire country that is specifically designed to treat adolescent males struggling with pornography, sexualized behaviors in a therapeutic wilderness environment. So think about what happens when a teen goes into this setting. We remove the digital noise entirely. We strip away the phones, the laptops, the algorithms, the hyper-stimulating environment that has been keeping their brain in a constant state of fight or flight and dopamine addiction. And we place them in the raw but beautiful, uncompromising honesty of the high desert nature of southern Utah. And in this setting, there are no screens to hide behind. There's no avatars to create, no scripts of dominance to perform, no digital basements to escape into. And under direct supervision of expert clinicians, myself, my partners, we understand adolescent neurobiology and sexual development, and these These teen boys are forced to slow down. They have to learn how to cope with their emotions without the escape. Through this process, they experience improvements in the emotional regulation. They learn to manage anxiety, frustration, loneliness without the digital pacifier. And as they go through this process, for many, for the first time in years, they begin to speak face to face with peers and therapists and parents about their shame, their fears, their desires. And Star Guides is where these old toxic scripts of dominance, isolation can finally be burned and put away. Away from all the pressures of modern digital life, their brains get a chance to reset. They learn real, authentic connection, what it feels like, and they begin that profound work of rebuilding a healthy relationship, well, with themselves, but also with you as parents. And ultimately, it is a total behavioral and neurological reset that paves the way for lifelong healing. And I've seen it transform the lives of hundreds of teen boys over the last 12, 13 years. Well, parents, as we close out today's episode, I want to leave you with a vital reminder. Your teenagers' sexual, emotional, and psychological development is far too precious and valuable and important to be left to an online algorithm. Your teen does not truly want a life of distant, empty dominance, or deep down, they are starving for a life of real, profound, and safe connection. They just don't know how to find it right now because the wrong script has been handed to them and pounded into their brain. But as parents, you are the author of who can help them to rewrite it. You are the guide your teenager needs to navigate this digital wilderness. So don't let fear, shame, or denial keep you frozen. So if you're seeing the warning signs that we have discussed today, act now. Look at the resources I mentioned. You'll find direct links to the recovery toolbox and to Star Guides in the episode description. And if your family is in need of intense immediate intervention, then jump on either Recovery Toolbox for Teens, or if it's severe, then Star Guides. Parents, thanks for tuning in today. I know how valuable your time is. I hope you found valuable information in this episode, and thank you for fighting for your teen's future. You're not alone in this journey. I'm Matt Bulkley. I'll see you in the next episode of Parent Guide.